Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We are here today to talk about retention in particular. And the backdrop to all of this is, of course, our wonderful current situation as far as the economy is concerned. So very much welcome to our webinar for B Corps on retention. So our speakers. So this is me. I'm Lucy James. Hi, I'm Managing Director at Quarsh. I somehow seem to be wearing the same shirt that I was when I took that photo. I don't know. I do wear different clothes. I promise. It's not just this shirt that I own. We also have with us Sean Brakehead, who's head of people and talent at MAPP, and we'll talk a bit more about him in a bit. And then Tracy Stringer, who's the recruitment manager at COOK. Okay, so the reason why we're all here is to talk about retention. I thought it would be a good thing to start out with some stats, some recent stats that came from the ONS. Literally over the last couple of months. So we can see here in the backdrop to everything that we've got going on at the moment that we have way more vacancies than we've ever had before and way fewer people than we've ever had before as well. So our employment rate is going up and up and up. Our economic activity is also going up. Those are people that are not going to be looking for a job whatever happens. They are out of the employment market or they're of working age. And then we have unemployment rate going down, tailing down. At the same time, we have this record number of vacancies, which actually has been really high, record breaking for a super long time. Now, some of that is clearly duplicates. However, it's still much higher than it's ever been before. So that in itself explains why it's so important to make sure that you know who you want to keep and then hold on to them as much as you possibly can. I had a look at another interesting stat that came out of the Gartner Q4 of last year's survey. And what I found really interesting about this is that if we look at recruitment and retention, we can see really clearly that good recruitment and retention mirror each other. We've as a business been involved in recruitment in particular, and also by definition also retention for the last 12 years. And these figures don't surprise me, these details don't surprise me, but it is interesting how closely they overlap. So we have the top attrition drivers and the top attraction drivers, and so many of them are the same. So it's really important more than ever to think about how we both recruit people and how we then retain them, and remembering that those drivers can be the same. Another interesting graphic I found recently was McKinsey's report on why people leave their previous job, why people have left their previous job over the year April 2021 to 22. And what I found interesting about this is it isn't just about salary. I know we talk a lot about salary, but as B Corps in particular, we have this fantastic opportunity to live and breathe our values, and that then disseminates down into the people that we are that we employ. So right at the top of the list, we have lack of career development and opportunity. Then we have total compensation. This has shifted a lot over the last probably 30, 40 years. So up until 2 or 3 years ago, salary was almost always number 6 across most demographics. Now it's up there at number 2, and in some surveys it's even number 1. So we do need to think about it, but all of these other elements come into play as well. And what I find really interesting about this graphic in particular is how many of these reasons are leadership related. Whereas it used to be management related, people join companies and leave managers. Now we're very much looking at what the leadership is doing, what the leadership in our business is doing, what you guys are all doing to keep the people that you want to keep, or to develop the people that you want to develop. So when we look at that, overlaid that against another interesting report that I came across back in December last year, and this is done by the CIPD and Omni combined. It's a really interesting total report. We can see that we have a couple of different elements at play. We have push factors and we have pull factors. And this in itself is super important when we look at how do we manage people in our workplace. Push factors: organizational change, management, lack of opportunity, lack of recognition, reward, and also culture. And these things are very specific and very negative. Whereas if you look at the pull factors, they're much more ephemeral, much harder to pin down. So what that's saying is that your employees are saying one thing and you as an employer are feeling something else. So the pull factors are all about opportunity. They're about career development, a work-life balance, alignment with goals, and then of course also salary and benefits. So what this means from a recruiting and retention perspective is that it's a much harder market to try and navigate. People are leaving for very specific reasons, that's what they're saying, and they're joining companies for much more ephemeral, much woollier reasons that are much more difficult to pull down, to pin down. How do we define opportunity, for example? How do we define career development? So during our retention work, it's very clear that we need to look at how are people's careers developing? How can we be very specific with people about how are they going to develop with you in a business? So then we overlay that again against this McKinsey report, again, the same one, but a bit more detail. And what employers are saying in things like exit surveys is that their people, when they leave, are looking for a better job. They're looking for more money. They're looking for a better work-life balance. I think in reality, what this translates to is that in exit interviews in particular, it's not always the truth that people are going to be honest with you as their employer, as their HR director, for example, even as their manager, about why they've chosen to move, why they've chosen to go to a different opportunity. These things are easy to say, well, we couldn't keep John, Joe, Fred, Sid, because they were looking for more money, because they were looking for a better car parking spot, for instance. But actually, when you dig into detail with those individuals and talk to them more personally, what they say is that they don't feel valued, they don't feel important, they don't feel valued by the organisation, or they don't align well with the purpose and the vision and the values of the business. And that's a lot more difficult to be clear about. Now, we as B Corps have a really huge opportunity because, of course, our purpose and our mission and our values are all very clearly driven through our business. So how do we make that more, how do we emphasize that more? How do we make that a greater reason for staying? So overall, we can see that people stay when they feel paid well, of course, when they're mentored, when they're challenged, when they're promoted, when they're involved, appreciated, valued, on a mission. Again, for us as B Corps, that's a much more straightforward thing than for many companies, and for that we should all be very proud, and empowered, and of course trusted by our teams around us. So if we take all of that and we overlay it against that second slide that I showed you, which was this one, the 11 out of 15 top attrition and attraction factors that overlap, we can see so many of them falling into that central section of that Venn diagram, and I find that really fascinating. So why is this all really important? Well, if we look at the impact of attrition and how it impacts on a business if we have too much flow going through a business, of course, some attrition is a good thing, too much becomes quite counterproductive. We can see it has an impact on revenue, stability of our workforce, impact on how well we can achieve our objectives and how well we can hit our goals. It also impacts on morale. If it's a constantly revolving door around you, it's quite difficult to feel part of the fabric, and that affects how good you feel as an individual, people leaving you behind. It affects the quality of output as you have new people coming through a business that need to be trained and developed and coached and guided a little bit more. It also affects your marketing return on investment, because all the money that you're putting into marketing can't then be turned into output through the work that you're doing, because you have this churning position. And it also makes it much harder to recruit. So imagine those people who are new into your business trying to put a really good value proposition together for the individuals that they're interviewing. It's much harder to do if they don't feel part of the fabric, if they don't feel part of your business. And that's certainly affected by a higher attrition rate. And this creates a cycle, an ongoing cycle of, and how can we make things better? So remembering again that good recruitment and retention overlap and mirror each other. These are all factors to consider when you're putting together your retention strategy. So one of the very first things to do when we're looking at what are we doing as far as retention is concerned is to think about where are we now. 3 things to look at. Firstly, looking at your attrition rate. So where are you in actuality? Look at some data. How many people have you lost over the last 6 months, 12 months, 2 years? And why is that? Can you dig into some detail about why it is that people have gone? Not just those reasons that people put on an exit interview sheet, but the real reasons why people are moving on. Can you find some patterns? And then look at what you need over the next 6 months, 12 months, whatever phase you're planning for, and then align those two. So who have we got that we want to keep? Who have we got that really would be okay if they moved on because we're moving into a different phase? And how do we then assess what we've got versus what we want to do? And a really good way of doing that is with a skills and a culture matrix. So very simple to do. Google it, you'll find 1,000 of them immediately, a spreadsheet with all of the names of your people down one side, all the culture and skills you need across the top, and then aligning it either out of 10 or out of 5 or something like that. And we can help you do that if it's tough. So once you've got all of that data and you know where you're going, what should formulate your retention policy? And what we think it boils down to is into these 9 different levers. And I'll run through them really quickly and then hand you over to Sean, one of our fabulous guest speakers. So the first one is around culture, and this, of course, is how your company feels, how it lives and breathes, not just from the inside, but also from the outside. How do you appear to your outside world as well? How do you treat each other? How do you behave? What are the expectations you have of your business? Where are the goals that you're looking to hit? What do you stand for, and so on? Then we have management. So management is often referred to as where culture meets the workforce. So if your managers aren't clear on how to live and breathe your culture, it's very difficult for their people to work out how they should behave as well. So do we have clear management guidelines as to what the business is looking to achieve and how that translates into their teams? Do they have the language to translate the goals of the board into actions that the workforce as a whole can understand? Particularly important when you have lots of blue-collar workers, for example, who aren't always completely aligned to the company's lofty ambitions for a great EBITDA. Then we have motivation engagement. Do we work with our people to understand what it is that they need? Not what do we think they need, but what do they actually need? And aligned with that also, training and development. Where do people want to go? What would benefit the business? How do we align those two so that the whole company moves in the same direction? Employer brand is often seen as being one of those things that's an external. So, it's important to think of employer brand when we're looking at attracting people, but retaining people is just as important. It's how a company, again, lives and breathes and feels, and what is the personification of all of that? How do you appear in your social media feeds? How do you appear on your website? What does your careers page look like? How do you communicate with each other? How does that all work? It's things that make people proud to work for you, as well as attracting people to you. And the important thing about that is to make sure that it is done with real authenticity and real integrity. So if you're not fond of your own EVP, of your own employer brand, you can do something about it and change it. Crucial, though, to be honest about it, to be truthful about what it is that you stand for, and be really clear on that throughout your business. And then ESG, environmental and social governance. We're all big fans, clearly. and ESG is one of those things that's becoming more and more important, and certainly to the next generation, the generation after that. So our millennials and Gen Zs, they are now making buying decisions and choosing who to work for based on the purpose and the vision and the values of the companies that they are selecting. So more than ever, we are ahead of our competition, most certainly, with a really clear ESG message. This is becoming even more important, and there will be other companies who are hitching themselves to the B Corp bandwagon as time goes on. So it becomes even more important to differentiate ourselves through honesty and integrity, and having a really good solid message that people can hang on to, and that importantly is real, isn't just greenwashing, but is truthful and honest. Well-being is one of those things that we often look at with retention and start and stop there. So the less exciting and enthusiastic companies out there may say, well, let's just put in place a yoga program or a working from home program, or I don't know, bean bags in the office and bring your dog in on Fridays. That's it. Well-being is one part of an overall well-being message, an overall retention message that incorporates so much more than simply how are people feeling. But particularly now, when we have a lot of remote working, it's important to remember that people, when they're sitting at home, after you close the screen, what is happening in their world? Are they banging their head quietly on the desk, or are they genuinely motivated and enjoying their day? How do we make sure that we have a blended opportunity, a hybrid working environment that works for everybody? The basics and data are exactly what they seem. Hertzberg's theory of motivation is an interesting one to look at in regard to the basics. Some things are demotivators if they're not there, and motivators if they are there. And it's crucial to work out what those things are. And then finally, data. So everything, I think, starts and stops with, what do you know about your workforce? What is it that they want? How is it that you can help them to achieve everything they need to achieve while still aligning with the goals? And the best way to do that is with a humongous, great big data gathering exercise that starts with a survey, I think. So we have one of those. If you guys want to use it, you're more than welcome. Contact Kate or Danny or me afterwards, and we'll happily share that with you so you can share that amongst your team. Okay, so that is it from me as a very quick overview of how retention should work from a theoretical point of view. Here is Sean. He's head of people and culture, I think, at MAPP. And over to you, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, from our perspective as a B Corp, it's just really wonderful as an opportunity to share about our journey and what we're doing. And so I'll just have the opportunity to just talk through what we do from both recruitment and a retention part, because there's a relationship between the two and how that plays into being a B Corp. And the reality is we're a values-driven business. And that's a core part of who we are, and it comes through in a huge amount of what we do. So I just, for me, it's just talking about MAPP as a business, what it means as a values-driven business, and looking at how we do recruitment and retention and linking all of these through. If we really start the context of MAPP, we look after buildings, and many of you will work in those buildings or shop in those buildings, or and connect in any way you can. So we take the view of what we want to do is radically reimagine how commercial property is managed. And this involves in creating spaces where businesses and people thrive, and helping our clients deliver their objectives, protecting our planet, and doing our bit for society. And that's how we've kind of positioned ourselves as a business. We've been around for 25 years. And part of what that means is it's about shared value in society. If you think about all the buildings that we see, and how often we go to the office or go to our local retail space, it connects with people. And because we manage it and we procure everything from security through to energy, it means that we can do really interesting things to help communities thrive, but buildings thrive as well. And we've done it for long enough. We don't do any of the other parts like rentals or selling. We just manage buildings, and we stick to that, and that's our knitting. And we focus this through 3 key objectives. We talk about being a great place to work, delivering exceptional service to our clients and our occupiers, as well as running a sustainable business. And we say sustainable both in the people, planet, profit element. And we talk about this as our corporate triangle and the tension that each one brings. We could spend all our money delivering an exceptional service, but no longer having a sustainable business or being a great place to work. So the board have this intention and wrestle with it. But what it means for our people is that we work on the basis of a world where we wake up each day inspired to go to work and feeling valued, whilst there and returning home at the end of the day fulfilled by what we've done and feeling like we've contributed and being part of a team which is greater than ourselves, which is a lofty ambition, but we turn that into, what is very nicely described as the employee value proposition. We call it our people pillars. And we do everything through this. We report on this, we talk about this, but the key driver is these 5 things. So the first thing is we know our people. And I know it sounds really flippant, but we really know our people. I started MAPP, we had 160 staff. We now have 572. And by the end of the year, we'll be at 600. And we've doubled in size since pre-pandemic. And I can tell you that between my team and I, we know everybody who works here. It's a little harder once we cross 300. I used to know where everybody worked and who everybody reported into. It's a little trickier, but we talk about the fact that everybody has a review cycle. Everybody has an opportunity to do a personality profile. Our line managers are expected to connect with their people one-to-one on a fortnightly basis. We invest in our people, we grow them. We have over 2,000 learning programs people can undertake. We also promote about 10 to 12% of our staff every single year, even with the growth, as we invest in people. We involve every single person. We do an annual survey asking, how can we be better? And at the same time as in our review cycle, we have a process where we say, tell us what you love about your job and tell us what you loathe about your job. And those things that we know people loathe, we really try and automate or change the process and encourage people to say, this is what you love, let's do more of that. Some of it's really simple, but when people say, I loathe admin, it's a little tricky to juggle, but we've done a few things that have made it easier. We've brought in some digital robots and automated some boring work, and people appreciate that. We also inspire our people. Everybody gets 2 charity days a year, and that's reported on. And we encourage people to give back into the community. And what was interesting, when we did a survey a couple of years ago, we had a phone call from the provider who does the data analytics. And their first comment was, we think something's wrong because the score is unprecedented. And we were like, no, that sounds about right, because our people really know the fact that we value and appreciate them. And that's part of the B Corp story for us, is that we've got not only what we think is a really good model, but we've also had the accreditation process, which was rigorous, as we all know, to actually say, hey, this is going really well. And we reward our people, and that reward takes place in different forms. One of the elements we do is we have a profit share, so everybody gets the benefit as part of the profit share. But we also do things like saying thank you and being appreciative. And, that's a core value for us. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But what it means from a numbers perspective is that we manage about £15 billion worth of assets across the country. We have over 900 properties we manage. and we kind of bring in about almost £1 billion worth of income for our clients in terms of rent, over 800 million, but also service charges. And we manage relationships of over 8,000 occupiers. Everything from a Tesco's and a Starbucks to a 2-team business that's just starting out in an office. And for us, it's all about managing each of those with a connection and a relationship that's not merely transactional. But what does it mean in the context of being a values-driven business? We are founder-led and founder-owned. So our CEO has been managing business for 25 years, and he's really passionate about this. And so the board that sits around him is equally passionate about it. And so we have 5 values that are absolutely built into everything we do. In fact, right next door is what we call our Values Day, which is for new joiners. And our CEO meets with those new joiners talking about what does it mean to be part of us as a business. We didn't intend, but everything starts with an A, which makes it slightly easier. But every now and again, I have to remind myself what is the one I'm missing. But the one we talk about is pursuing a venture. It's about being innovative, thinking outside the box, trying new things. If anyone says, well, this is how we do things around here and I don't want to change, there's tend to be stunned silence and confusion because we're constantly driving to be better. We embrace accountability. We expect there's an upward reporting model. We expect people to say, hey, I did this, I got it wrong, or hey, I did this, I got it right. You can't hide. And part of that is recognizing that we don't really do politics. You have to be completely open about what you're doing. And part of that builds into the avoiding ambiguity. If you don't know how to do something or there's some confusion, you stick up your hand and go, this isn't working for me, I need clarity. And that boils down to a key value that we have called being appreciative. And one of the ways we play that out is we say thank you. And it's thank you as much as in our internal communication platform, but also every year we have our hero awards. We have 2, we have the superhero and the unsung hero. Superhero is everybody votes and we choose the top ones and we celebrate the people, but we have the unsung heroes who someone may not know about, and our managers and senior team pull together that list. And it's always fun because I get to see everything. And one of the things that happens almost every year is I have to go to the board and say, guys, instead of the 15 people, we've got 20. And they go, no, it's fine, blow the budget. We want to celebrate people. And we give them £250 vouchers, and we make a big song and dance because we want to celebrate them. But at the same time, line managers can do that as well. And we live authentically. There's no politics. We are who we say we are. We don't try and have 2 versions of us. The public version for recruitment and the retention version is different. It's like we are who we say we are. And it's always quite fun when you meet new joiners who they go, I'm just waiting for there to be something that's not true, but everything you've said in the recruitment process is what I've experienced. And for me, that's a key part of who we are as a business is being real. And that goes back to what it means for us. It's about the people. We always talk about the people are people. They have intrinsic value. I get always nervous when we kind of try and redefine people as assets or tools or equipment or capital resources, those kind of things. They're people, they're human beings, and sometimes it's a little messy. But I have 570 individuals, and some are extroverted, some are introverted, but they all add value. And for us, it's about how do we harness that value, but also about recognizing that we want to do things differently. So we treat people like adults. We treat them with respect and as individuals. We don't say to people, this is how you must behave. We say, you're an adult, choose. And if you have any concerns or questions, ask. We have high expectations for performance and development. We use a huge amount of data analytics. We give line managers data on how they manage certain people, but we also ask questions. Tell us what works, tell us what doesn't, because they do the job every day. We talk about being kind and honest. We had a member of staff whose partner was terminal, and everyone was kind of running around going, what do we do? I said, well, the one thing we can do is time. So we said to him, just go, just leave your work. It's fine. We'll call you when we need you, kind of thing. And for 6 months, he worked a couple of days a week. and got to spend the time with his partner before she passed away. And, you know, it's the one thing we could do. You know, we couldn't fix anything else, but we could give him time. And that's the joy of being in an organization that is kind. We try and support, but we don't parent. So I don't tell people, you know, you have to be here at 9. You know, you're an adult, work out the plan and stick to your plan. But if you say you're going to be here at 9, be here at 9. Don't play a game, because culture and values really matter. And we know that because, you know, we've had feedback. People said, you know, you saved my marriage, or not that we did any marriage counseling, but we gave people an opportunity to manage their own times. They didn't feel like they had to be in an office for 14 hours a day to prove that they were delivering. We've had people say I could have a family because, you know, there's flexibility. We communicate and we welcome questions. You know, our CEO has an open email address that says, you know, if you have any questions, send them. And he's more than willing to engage. We're completely honest about the feedback we get in engagement surveys, and we publish those. We don't hide. And we expect leadership and management, they're active and intentional. So you can't manage someone by email. You have to meet with them. You have to talk about what's working and what's not. And it's not about control, and it's not about policy. But it's also, we have to recognize that not everyone fits. And that's always a tough one. You know, some people really struggle with how we work. Yeah, and sometimes we have to say that there are people who violate our values, and we have to say, this isn't working for you. And it's not a one-time thing, it's if there's a pattern. And I've had to exit senior people who just didn't fit, and because they wanted to operate in a very different way. And we have to recognize that it doesn't always work. But it doesn't mean that we're not honest and we're not kind, and we manage the process. But then how do we hire into that space? And so for us, how we hire is we have 2 different groups of people. We have our site-based roles, which are less, they're kind of less white collar, they're less professional qualifications type spaces. And then we have our non-site roles, which are more traditionally white collar. Now, the tension that you've got in this is that most of our competitors will separate those into 2 separate legal entities and treat them as 2 different groups, whereas we treat them as one. And part of that means that we have to manage them, everyone, in the same way. And the feedback is really positive and people appreciate it, but it means recruitment is a lot more complicated. And so part of what is about presenting MAPP as a choice, because we're values driven, and because of our employee value proposition and our culture, and the fact that we tell a story as B Corp, saying it's not just us, here's an external measure of the fact that how we do this, and the fact that we're real and not corporate. So when we send out an offer letter, it doesn't say, I hereby have the following offer attached. We say, this is the kind of email that you love to get, like, here's a money back from the HMRC, or, you know, here's winning the lottery, kind of, this is that kind of email. And we say that because we want people to be encouraged and excited about joining us, not feeling like they've got a letter from their doctor. We link rewards and benefits to the market, which is complex as best as it is, but it's all about good line management. And we invest a lot in our line managers, and we have high expectations of them. And so when it comes to retention, for us, it's making sure that we recognize that we have an objective that this is the best place to work for people's careers. And it's not just a corporate objective, it's an objective of our CEO. You know, when he says, what do you want your legacy to be? He says, I want people to look back and say, MAPP was the best place I ever worked. And that for us is a huge goal. And we know we get it right sometimes. And, you know, we know when we don't. But we listen and we ask questions, and we want that engagement. We're constantly driving to make things better, and we're transparent in our communication. We don't hide anything. And we're people-led, not policy-led. I do love it when people say to me, the policy says this, and I have to confidently say, I wrote it, I know what it says, but what do you need? Well, what will help you succeed in this context? What do you need? You know, there's no policy that manages compassionate leave. You know, you get 2 days because, you know, you lost a close friend, but, you know, they weren't really a close friend, so you get nothing. It doesn't work like that. And so we lead and manage through conversation or through email about, and making it about being human and being real. And that's why people choose to join us. And that's why people choose to stay. And so for us, it's a huge privilege to be part of this journey in people's careers. So thank you very much. And I think I'm handing over to Kate. So
just before you do, thank you, Sean, so much. So much of that resonated with everything we talk about in terms of good retention policies and good ways of working. It's such a crucial thing to get right. And I'm so pleased that you aligned the recruitment and retention piece together. So, get retention right, and that leads to good recruitment, get recruitment right, and that leads to people staying with your business for longer. I loved what you had to say about we know because we hear. We know that this works because people tell us that it works. And what I thought stood out in particular is that yours is an industry sector in particular that doesn't always focus on retention. We rarely hear that in your community. And so I can imagine that people come to you not expecting, as you said, things to be as you say that they are going to be.
Yeah.
And so one of my questions, which I'd like to talk to you about at the end, is when you have people come into your business and you treat them like adults, but they've come from an environment where they are told what to do. How does that work? Because I can imagine that would be a real difference. And we'll talk, if it's okay, we'll gather that up as one of our questions at the end, because I really would like to know about that.
Definitely. Happy to.
Thank you, Sean, very much. So over to Tracy.
Good morning. I'm Tracy, and I'm obviously from Cook. I've been with Cook for 10 months, but I've been in the recruitment industry for 18 years. As I say, I've only been with Cook for 10 months, and I'm blown away by obviously how everyone is treated and the company that they are. Obviously, it is amazing to be B Corp, but the things we do too is for the people. We're very much people-led company. And obviously we have some visions to work to for 2025. One of them is obviously vibrant, inclusive workplace. So that is obviously to encourage more female leaders in the workplace. Caring and connected communities. We operate, every week we feed the homeless in Sittingbourne, and by 2025 we want to have delivered more 400,000 meals to the community. And obviously in food, and obviously work more for sustainability and just obviously better environment, animal welfare. I mean, we already do so much, but obviously and by 2025 we want to be doing more. So obviously we have been B Corp since 2013, but obviously every year we have increased our score, which is amazing. So we have lots of different visions and values at Cook, and some of them are obviously Jedi, and that again to be more inclusive, more female leaders. Our raw talent program, I'm not sure if anyone knows about our raw talent, but it is something that is truly amazing. We have just won a Queen's Award for it. So basically it was started to help people that have come out of prison, obviously mental health problems, or just been unemployed for a long time. So, and now it's gone from strength to strength, and we've helped over 100 people since it started to obviously work at Cook. And we go into prisons as well to do training for people being released. Rosie, who owns one of the co-owners at Cook, she's really, it's one of the things she's really proud of. And when we first started at Cook with the raw talent, obviously there was some pushback, some people didn't want that, but now they are supported not just by the raw talent team, but the whole of the teams they work for. And it is one of the most amazing things to hear people's stories and say how Cook, some people say that Cook saved their life, saved them going back into prison. So yeah, really massive organization that one feeds two. So obviously we have 92 shops across the UK, and every child's meal we sell in the shop, we feed a child in Mawali. And again, we're looking to over the 2025, we're looking to at least have issued another 1.5 million meals out in Mawali. Obviously, living wage. We are a living wage company, and profit share. We at the moment, obviously, everyone gets profit share of the company, and by 2025, that's going to increase the percentage of that as well. Sustainable packaging. We're looking obviously by 2025 to be 100% recyclable, and have used 70% recycled packaging. So this is just obviously a little bit of obviously numbers of what obviously financial security is really key at Cook. Health and safety, career development. We have our own career and development career and development team. So we have two lovely ladies that head that up. And so with Cook, it is obviously about growing yourself with Cook. So I done a squiggly career exercise a few months ago. And one thing that come out of everyone is said that there is opportunity, and how they've supported to get to that opportunity. So it's, you know, it is really something that we are really proud of. And you are really your master of your own destiny at Cook. So yeah, that's just obviously about obviously some stats there. And then we have every year we do the best companies survey. So everyone gets a survey out to them. So these were some of the things that obviously were really important to people. Obviously our carbon neutral is really important. And I think, as Lucy said earlier, that younger people now are more really concerned about sustainability and the environment and the planet. Obviously our raw talent comes out at one of the top as well. Again, that, you know, it is supported so much at Cook, and that's for everyone. Our kindness fund, obviously about community. You know, we are based down in Sittingbourne, and it is quite a large community down here, and we have a lot of local people that work for us. So for their community is really important. We're obviously a certified living wage. Our animal welfare, again, a lot more younger people and older people are really concerned about animal welfare. And our obviously recyclable, profit share is, it's amazing that the profit share is quite low down the list. I thought it would be a lot higher, if I'm honest. And obviously the Mawali, the meals we give away, and recycling food cycle. We also, for charity, if you support a charity at Cook, you're given an extra 5 days to go and support that charity, which is amazing. And obviously everyone at Cook can give out a care card to support someone who's going through a tough time, with 30% discount for obviously our shops and our home delivery. So obviously this is just about obviously some of our workforce that are proud to be B Corp. I think everyone who works for Cook is proud to be B Corp, but we're also proud of how our values. We have some core values, obviously be remarkable. So it's about being the best you can at your job. Care for one another, have fun. We do have quite a lot of fun at Cook. We are quite a laid back company. But obviously we all do work hard. Family, it is really important about family at Cook. And my favourite one is Churchill's pig. So obviously Churchill said, never have a cat because they look down at you. Never have a dog because they look up to you, but have a pig because they look you straight in the eye. And that is one of our main values at Cook, is about being honest with people. And you can be open as long as obviously it's polite. And also on the back of, we have our value cards, and we had so many people join during obviously lockdowns and COVID that haven't met. So on the back of our values, we have a cookie recipe. So years before COVID, everyone used to, when they started at Cook, used to get a welcome meeting, and then they'd get an invite to come and make cookies. So we just brought that back. So we've got over like 200 people, I think, in the last 2 years that have joined Cook that might not have met people because of working from home. So you come along, we pick people randomly from each department. So they come along, they share our values, and then they cook cookies together. So which is really, really amazing. Yeah, so I think that is us. There is so much at Cook. I could talk all day probably about, and you know, I've been in recruitment and obviously sold, and when I'm selling Cook to someone, I could talk for hours about it.
Thank you so much. So much of that, again, it's wonderful to hear from two such passionate speakers who talk about their businesses with so much dedication. I have to say, I want to come and work for both of you now. So I particularly like the idea of just checking everything and going to do some cooking for the day. That possibly is something that I'll bring into my business too. Danny and Kate, if you want to start doing some cooking, we can do that. I don't think it'll be anywhere near as good as Tracy's though. And again, what stands out, I think, for me with Tracy's description of her business is just how much she knows about the people who work for the business and what they need to understand. I did think it was interesting that 9.4%, that number at the very bottom about what's motivating for people, only 9.4 is in red, 9.4 but it's 30% discount. But for those people for whom this is important, it will be an absolutely crucial lifeline. So that 9.4% is probably a little bit of a red herring in some regards, I would imagine, because if you need it and it's useful, my goodness me, that would be top of your list, wouldn't it, to show that little bit of care and support to people that they want to work with. I love the idea of raw talent as well, and again that comes down from your chief exec, from your founder. Is so important because it's much more resonant, isn't it? It matters to her, and therefore it matters to the business, and therefore it'll be pushed through. And both of you talk so eloquently about being really purpose-led businesses, and that is where we as B Corps really stand out. Both of you are in industries where, broadly speaking, employees are cared about less than they should. That they are seen as being assets, in Sean's words, or just retailers or shopkeepers in Tracy's world, or just cooks or whatever it might be. And for you guys, they are essential to the running of your business. This is where we will always do a better job. And it isn't just about being better than our competition, of course. It's about just flat out doing the right thing. And if we do the right thing and we continue to do the right thing, it doesn't matter if everybody else is doing the same thing. That is a good thing. Right. So yes, right now we may well do better in our so-called war for talent, but it would be so much better if everybody followed these same objectives. And then just finally, I found it really interesting that your values, both of your values, are really clear and are not table stakes. So I heard Sean talking with real passion about all of the A's, which I can't remember now, apart from one, which was authenticity. Sorry, Sean. and then Tracy, all of yours as well. And what was interesting about that is that one of them, honesty. You could say, well, that's table stakes. You come to the business and you're honest and you're truthful. The way that you describe it is so, the picture that you generate from talking about Churchill's pig makes it much more real than simply saying, we expect you to be honest. And I love that. I love that as a description of how things work. The company is very open. We get a sales report every week, and that's everyone across the board. Ed and Rosie, who own the business, we get a Monday email from Ed, and it tell us about what's gone well last week, and then on a Friday we get one from Rosie that obviously I'm wishing everyone a happy weekend. It's just when, obviously, as I say, I've only been here 10 months, and do you know, like you're saying, people were saying to yourself, Sean, I'm just waiting for that thing that's not right. Yeah, and what's really interesting is it draws all back to, remember those slides at the beginning with the stats and the data about why do people leave and why do people join, and what sits in the middle of that Venn diagram. And both of you talked about so many of those attributes that sit nicely in that middle section, and clearly it works. So I mean, we haven't asked you the question outright, but how is your attrition? How is your retention? To a question to both of you, Tracy. How do you hold on
to
to
be
people?
fair, we are working on figures because we've got so many different departments. It's really, really hard. So we're just working on a formula to work that out. But in our ops teams, our retention is probably a lot less than it will be in our office and retail, because obviously, you know, we're not allowed to call it a factory at Cook, it's a kitchen. But predominantly we are a manufacturing business. So although it's a very good manufacturing business and is a very healthy and, you know, kind, but people are standing on their feet, you know, 8 hours a day. We can't take away what has to happen for that food to be made. So, you know, it might be that people don't want to work in that kind of environment. So in our ops, it's probably a lot higher than it will be in our office and our retails. But we don't have those stats right at this moment.
Data is everything, right? So we'll capture that. Danny, you have your hand up. Do you have questions to share?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, I think the chats, we're having a bit of issues with chat. So if anyone's got any questions, please do raise your hands now, and we'll come in and try and get them sorted. We've got a few questions that have come in over email. One that I wanted to put out, I know that we've sort of alluded to this. I think if we put this to Sean first. Sean, what part of the recruitment process has the most effect on retention? I know that you mentioned that.
To be perfectly honest, the key thing for us is the onboarding process. I mean, the speed of the recruitment is important, but the minute that contract is signed, that it no longer becomes, oh, you're now one of us and we ignore you. There's a lot of intentional work that goes through. Having done onboarding in my master's program, 75% of people who leave in their first year make the decision in their first week. And so a lot of it is about what people experience. So we make it fun. We send people a cookie. We have a detailed onboarding plan. They get a box with all sorts of treats in it in the first couple of weeks. And we say to people, this is your takeoff. It's your honeymoon phase. So it's really about having fun and learning and connecting. It's not about hitting a bunch of targets, because you don't know anything yet. And we find the feedback from then is absolutely phenomenal. And people really value it. I know it sounds really funny, but having a computer on your first day and having an email address set up and meeting your line manager, we don't make people start until 10 o'clock. We say, meet your line manager for a cup of coffee and talk about what the weeks ahead going to look like. And that, I didn't realize that actually was quite a big deal for some organizations, that they couldn't get that part right. But it makes a massive difference.
So that's a really astonishing statistic. I didn't realize it's quite that many. So wow. There's another question. What one thing would you do to boost retention? Maybe Lucy, I'm going to throw that on to you in the spotlight. What one thing can you do to boost retention?
I think so much of this is about gathering information. I bang on about this a lot, about finding out what it is that people want. I don't think there's one thing that you can do for every business, irrespective, every business in. So it's about what your people need. So the one thing that you can do is get that information to begin with. Find out what it is that people need. Find out what it is that drives them, that motivates them. Find out where the gaps are in the business. Is it management? Is it leadership? Is it working environment? Is it, day-to-day operations? Is it money? Is it benefits, and so on? So there isn't one thing for every company, but there will be one thing that's most important for your business. And the trick is to find out what that one thing is for you. That sounds like a bit of a non-answer, I suppose, but the same thing won't work for Tracy and for Sean and for our business, because we run 3 completely different types of business. Yeah, so the one thing is find out what that one thing is.
Good answer. And please, guys, do feel free to weigh in. We're really interested in any challenges you've had and any success stories that you've got. There's another question. Tracy, I'm going to pick on you this time. How has B Corp boosted your retention?
I mean, obviously being B Corp means to people, and it's really hard because a lot of the people that we may recruit probably wouldn't know about B Corp until we tell them. and that is an honest answer without ops. But once you start talking about it, they really buy into it, because we do it for the people, not just for being B Corp. As I said, being B Corp is amazing, but what we do for the people, because we want obviously people to stay. And so, yeah, so a lot of it is just educating them about B Corp and realizing that, you know, we are about the people, yourself, we want you to grow. So yeah, I think that would be my honest answer.
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because what we find, sorry, Tracy, what we find is exactly what Sean was saying earlier, that people join us and they don't expect that what we say we are, we actually are. And that's a real shift, isn't it? People often come to us 6 months in and say, well, when's the other shoe going to drop? Same for you, Sean, I think. So it's less about being B Corp. For us, was we became B Corp because why not? We do everything that's on the list anyway. So it was such an obvious thing to gain accreditation for. What was interesting about your background, Tracy, is what that jump was between early on in your B Corp journey and now. So there was a huge jump in 2017.
I mean, I'd never heard of B Corp.
How did that happen? That 2017 to 2021 huge jump in your B Corp certification? You went from 88 to 104, I think. Do you know what it was that did that? Was it your people agenda?
Listening to what people have to say and doing it better. You know, we're very much what can we do better? What if we do it this way? Would it be better? So I think it's just about listening to people. As I say, we have Churchill Pig. We have what we call a Churchill Pig Week as well, where people can just send in their questions. Rosie and Ed do a live question time, really. They sit with everyone and people can fire questions at them. But everywhere if you ever come to Cook, you'll see little pigs, little paper pigs everywhere. And people can just write them, give them into their leaders with any ideas. So it's about just talking to people, making things better. And as a company, you grow, don't you, with obviously what people are telling you, you try and make it better for them.
Absolutely do. We're rocketing to the end of the whole hour. I can't believe how quickly that's gone. Thank you both very much, Sean and Tracy, for being such fabulous speakers and joining us today. If anybody has any further questions, if anybody would like to talk to Tracy or to Sean or to Kate, Danny or me about anything we've covered today, please do get in touch. You've got our contact details. In the meantime, I guess thank you ever so much for coming, and hopefully see you again.